context of showing you provision. And provision is a system of stocking that was my dream and my vision for the acquisition of the auto by Auto Trader. Because it required assets, data assets, that I simply didn't have access to. And the acquisition of the auto by Auto Trader about a year and a half ago made it possible. And I think that this provision system, and I realize this will sound like a very bold, perhaps crazy claim, but I think that this provision system will change the nature of the used car operation. And as I said, it will change it at least two levels, philosophically and technologically. So, you know, let's take that trip to the far reach of the realm of used car management. And let me begin philosophically. You know, I would say that the most common complaint among dealers today is that it's really hard to be profitable in the used car business. And to be sure, I understand that condition, because never in my career or yours have we seen higher wholesale values for used cars, ever increasing higher values that we have to pay. And yet there's this pressure, there's this ceiling of what we can ask for these cars and still expect to see people. So you got a rising floor, and you've got a sort of a sinking ceiling of what we can ask for the cars. And what we've got on our hands here is a highly margin compressed environment. There's no question that the opportunity between what we have to pay and what we can sell these cars for has never been less in the business. And you know, that puts a lot of pressure and stress and strain on your operations to make money. And I hear that all the time. But I'm going to make a pretty bold statement that I've really come to believe. And that is this. I fundamentally don't think that dealers operate their used car department first and foremost for profit. Yeah, I'm prepared to make a case to you that dealers generally don't operate their used car department first and foremost for profit. As crazy as that seems, I've come to believe that the primary purpose and objective of used car operations is necessity. Necessity primarily to support the new car department and to a certain extent the fixed department. So how could I make such a claim that you don't operate, in spite of your limitation that you can't make money, how could I support the claim that you don't really operate that department for profitability? Well, think about this. If you were an investor, a pure financial investor in a used car operation, or for that matter, a financial investor in any endeavor, if you were rational, you would have certain expectations of the individual running your investments. So imagine this. Imagine that I came before you today and I said, hey, you know what? I want to manage your personal finances. I want to be your wealth manager. Well, if you were rational, one of the first questions that you would have for me is, okay, if you want to manage my money, what's your strategy? How are you going to invest my money? And what if I said to you, I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. Would that make you feel very secure? What if you said to me, well, how much money do you want me to give you to invest? And what if my response was, I don't know, just give me your checkbook. I'll take it when I need it. I might put it back if I got enough. Is there any way in the world that you would even consider allowing me to run your investments? To allow you to have that expectation of a rational investor to make a return, the highest possible return with least risk? And the obvious answer is no. You'd never, ever consider allowing me to run your investment portfolio with such a laissez-faire or non-strategic way. But yet, I'm prepared to show you that that is not too far adrift from what you, as investors, are willing to do when it comes to investing your capital, your corporate capital, in that used car department. And as a result, I don't really think that it's fair for us to believe, if I could make that case to you, that it's not too different in the used car department in terms of how your money's invested and how much of your money's invested. If I could actually make that claim, I think that you would have to realize that you're not really in that business as a rational investor. And a rational investor's objective is to make the highest possible return with the least risk. So, if you were an investor, a rational investor in the used car business, with earning the highest possible return with the least risk as your primary objective, you would require certain commitments of strategy before you would allow a single dollar of your corporate assets to be directed to that endeavor. And this is where we jump off with the provisioning system. My belief is that if you really are in this used car business for profit, it is incumbent upon you as a rational investor to absolutely insist on certain strategy commitments. And at a minimum, I think to be a rational investor in the used car business, you have to require that a strategy be present at all times in terms of how your dollars are going to be invested. Now, the objective of a rational investor is to invest their capital in a manner that is likely to yield the highest possible return with the least risk. So, when it comes to investing your dollars in used car inventory, you have to make some choices. Because classic economics tells us that there's no such thing as unlimited resources. There's no such thing as unlimited money, unlimited space, unlimited effort. And if you accept that premise, choices have to be made. And presumably as an investor, rational choices need to be made. So the first thing I would say to you, if you're really an investor in the used car business for profitability, it's incumbent upon you to make some rational choices about what types of vehicles your dollars will be invested in. And the right answer to that question is your vehicles should be invested, your dollars should be invested in vehicles that are most likely to achieve the highest possible return with the least risk. To say that you could invest in any or should invest in any or all vehicles that happen to come your way is not to make a choice. And not to make a choice is an irrational behavior of a prudent investor, because choices have to be made unless you have unlimited resources, which is never the case. So let me tell you how I think about this. I'm going to show you what I call a strategy page of the provisioning system. And it looks like this. On the left-hand side, you have a list of types of vehicles with sub-classifications of those vehicles. And across the top, you have price bands or price buckets. So what this does is it creates a grid with cells. And each cell represents a particular type of a vehicle and a particular price point. Now, the first prudent behavior of choice on the part of an investor in a used car operation would be to say that only certain of these cells represent the best possible opportunity for return with the least risk. And I want to tell you that there's a myriad of ways to make that assessment. There's tons of tools and market data out there that would allow you to make such a judgment. And the purpose here today is not to talk about those tools that will help you make the judgment or how you should make the judgment, whether you should do it on market data, historical data. That's a whole different discussion in and of itself. But the point is, if you really are going to consider yourself a rational investor in the used car business, you have to analyze available data and make the most intelligent decisions you can about which of these very many different segments are ones that give you the best opportunity for return with the least risk given your limited resources. Now, the hypothetical that I'm going to give you is that you're a Chevrolet dealer in Chicago in the wintertime. And if you were such a dealer, studying available data, you have to make some choices if you're really going to think that you're an investor, because you can't just assume that everything's the same. And the hypothetical that I'm going to give you would say this. It would say that given the available data, my experience, etc., as a Chevrolet dealer in the grip of winter in Chicago, I'm going to focus my investment capital in used cars in three primary groups: intermediate cars, trucks, and SUVs. Now, that's not to say that you'll never have a vehicle on your lot that doesn't meet one of those key strategic segments. It will happen. But those vehicles should be recognized not as strategic investments, but opportunistic investments. What I'm going to do as a prudent investor in the used car business is I'm going to exercise my control to be sure that my dollars are concentrated most heavily in those segments that represent the highest possible return for the least possible risk, given the available data for me to analyze. And in my case, at this point, I'm going to make the decisions in the segments of intermediate cars, trucks, and SUVs. Now, I can change that strategy commitment at any time. And I should change it from time to time, because the world changes, things happen out there, seasons change, customer preferences change, so it's okay to change that commitment anytime you feel or deem it to be necessary. But what's not okay is to fail to have a strategy at any given time as to what types of vehicles are most likely to achieve the highest possible return at the least risk. So the provision tool asks you to behave like the rational investor by first making the decision about what segments represent your strategic opportunity, and then it allows you essentially to shut off, gray out, close down all the other segments. The second strategic commitment that you as an investor, a rational investor in the used car business, need to make if you expect to have a profit is you need to make a commitment on how much resource you're willing to put against this investment. Now, there's a number of different ways to make this decision. The way that I've chosen in the context of the provision system is to do it not based on a dollar commitment, but based on a dealership day supply. My personal belief is that a dealership has no business stocking more than a 45-day supply, essentially a month and a half worth of inventory based on the recent sales over the past 30 to 45 days. But you can make that decision anywhere you want. It's fine. But just don't fail to make that decision. Because if you're not willing to put that strategic stake in the ground in terms of how much money you're willing to commit to this investment, then please don't consider yourself a rational investor in this business for the purpose of making a profit first and foremost. So, what the provision system allows you to do overall, or for that matter, cell by cell, is to plug in the target, your target day supply for each segment. And again, I would recommend it for my dealership no more than 45 days. The provision system at all times understands what you have in stock in each cell that represents your strategic focus, understands how many of those you've sold over the last 45 days, and gives you a buy or a sell signal. The green means you need to buy. The red means to sell in that segment or that cell of the spreadsheet in order to balance your actual inventory against your strategic objective. Starts to sound like we're a money manager here, right? Starts to sound like you're an investor exercising some rational behavior. But not to have the strategy of how you're going to deploy those dollars and in what quantities suggests that we're not really acting as prudent investors, and therefore we should not expect profitability. It might happen, but it's not first and foremost in terms of our objective, because if it was, we would exercise at least the minimum discipline of a prudent, rational investor. So this strategy page of the provision system is philosophical in nature, but grounded in just some of the most basic principles to say that if you expect a profit, you better exercise some discipline of rational investment behavior. And in this case, it's just two things. What types of vehicles represent your strategic focus given the available data for the purpose of achieving the highest return at least risk, and how much money, capital, you're willing to commit to each one of those. So that's the starting jumping off place. That's the philosophical part of the provision system. What I'm going to show you next is something that I think is pretty incredible. What I'm going to show you next, I think, will change the nature of the used car operation. Because once you have a strategy, if you have a strategy, like any strategy, it needs to be executed. And when it comes to executing a strategy of provisioning, there are essentially three steps. Number one, you have to actually buy vehicles. You have to figure out what to pay for them. And then you have to figure out where to find them. Those are the three execution steps of your strategy. Now, if we're still on our strategy page here, I want to draw your attention to the fact that we have a green buy signal in intermediate SUVs in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. It says that we need 8. So what that means is that we need to acquire 8 right now in order to balance against our objective of having a 45-day supply on hand based on recent sales of such vehicles. So the first execution step is, okay, I need 8 intermediate $15,000 to $20,000 SUVs. Well, which one should I buy? What type should I buy? Well, here is a point of execution that historically we would rely on a buyer's judgment. We might rely on some other technological guide in terms of what would be the best $15,000 to $20,000 intermediate SUV if you were a Chevrolet dealer in Chicago in the Griffin looking. Well, I'm here to show you how a blind guy is. A blind guy can answer that question today better than any so-called expert can answer. Imagine a day that's here now, where you can simply log onto a page called the recommendation page and be given the answer. Just given the answer. Given the best, most rational answer that's ever been available to you. So you see on this recommendation page, the very first vehicle on that list is an 07 Volkswagen Turd with a V6. Why is that vehicle on the recommendation page? Well, what we can see, as we already identified, is that our strategy, imagine that, told us that we need 8 of these things in the $15,000 to $20,000 category. And this one, this Volkswagen Turd V6, is the best one in the universe for that dealer at this moment. How do we know that? Well, as you'll see, every vehicle on this page has a letter grade. And it has a letter grade using a scale that we're all familiar with from our school days. A, B, C, D, F. And this particular vehicle has an A-. We know what that means. It's pretty darn good. And this particular vehicle, this 07 Volkswagen Turd, is the #1 best choice to fill that first slot of 8 of $15,000 to $20,000 intermediate SUVs. Well, how did it get, or why did it get an A-? Well, today, what we have the ability to do is pretty exciting. We have the ability to look behind that A-. And what I'm going to show you is the ability today to identify 7 discrete characteristics of every vehicle in any market at any moment. 7 discrete characteristics, all of which have a significant impact on the performance of that vehicle on that lot. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a weighted average of those 7 indices and roll them up into the A-. Now, note what I said. It's a weighted average. It's sort of like being in school in a semester and having some quizzes that count for less, having some tests, having some midterms. You know, they count differently. They're weighted differently. But at the end of the quarter of the semester, when we roll them up, we get an overall grade. And in this case, it's A-. So allow me to introduce to you now the 7 attributes that likely have more to do with the performance of a vehicle on a dealer's lot at a given point in time than anything else we've ever been able to get our hands on. The first is what we call demand. And the grade that this 07 Volkswagen Touareg got for demand in Chicago in January was an A+. Why did it get an A+? Well, what's pretty exciting today is that on the leading used car consumer portal, autotrader.com, not the only one, but the one that draws the most amount of consumer traffic in every market across the country, we can see every single search requested by every consumer every moment of every day. And here's what we know. We know that on that day in Chicago in January, the #1 car that consumers asked to see based on search is this car, this Volkswagen Touareg. It's in the 99th percentile. In fact, there's only less than 1% of SUVs in Chicago on that day and for the prior 3 weeks that's being asked to be seen by consumers more often than this car. What an interesting place to start. To actually have the ability to choose vehicles that people actually are expressing the highest degree of interest based on their behavior of search on the internet. That gets an A+ due to the fact that it achieved in the 99th percentile of all searches of intermediate vehicles, $15,000 to $20,000. The second test is what we call interest. Now, what you have to understand about consumers doing searches is that virtually nobody enters into the search box something so specific as an 07 Volkswagen Touareg V6. They just don't do that. I mean, they might enter Touareg, they might enter Volkswagen Touareg, but nobody's going to enter 07 Touareg with a V6. So what the interest does is equally as exciting. Not only can we see today what vehicles consumers are asking for on their search, but we can see which vehicles on the search result page they're drilling down to what we call the VDP and how long they spend on that page examining those cars. So that behavior of clicking on the specific car on the page when it's 1 of 25 and evaluating which cars those are and how long they spend on each one of those cars is a further refinement of their behavior intent. It shows us that the types of Volkswagen Touaregs that they seem to be most interested in looking at are the 07s with V6s. We call this a conversion from a search result page, an SRP, to a VDP, and what we can see is that this one got a grade of an A. Why? Because it converted 07 Touaregs with V6s, converted SRPs to VDPs at the outstanding rate of 7.27%. If you're in tune with these metrics, what you know is that the average car on AutoTrader converts around 2%. This car is like 3 times more likely to convert an SRP to a VDP, telling us that it's the 07 V6 version of this Volkswagen Touareg where people really seem to be gravitating. The third characteristic, is that some vehicles get a lot of curiosity, but they're not really cars that sell in any sort of volume in the retail marketplace. So this one is volume. And what we can see for volume is that it gets an A. Because 11 of these have been sold in this dealer's immediate market over the past 45 days. 11 might not seem like a lot, but it's in the 90th percentile of all $15,000 to $20,000 SUVs at the year level of 07. So it actually has pretty darn good realistic characteristics of being a car that's actually selling in the retail marketplace as opposed to being one that's just a car of curiosity. The next metric is one that all of you velocity dealers are really well attuned to today, and that is its market day supply. And for those of you that are not velocity managed dealerships, market day supply is an expression of the relationship of a vehicle's supply and its demand. And what velocity dealers know is that when you have high demand and short supply, the cost of acquiring the sale goes down, and the sensitivity, the price sensitivity of the vehicle in the market also goes down. So what you want to have, to the extent you can, are vehicles that have the lowest possible market day supply, and this vehicle gets an A. It's got a 37 market day supply, which again puts it well into the 90th percentile of all intermediate SUVs in the $15,000 to $20,000 category. The next characteristic test that we can see for every car in any market is something that we all care about. The market on day one at a price point where it is most likely to get action, cover your profit, cover your reconditioning, cover your expenses, and be all good. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll never bid over that amount, nor does it. You do need books for a couple different reasons. Number one, if it's a wholesale acquisition that you're evaluating, this retail basis doesn't have relevance. You also need books today to reference loan values, because that represents a certain reality of what these vehicles' destiny holds for them. So you do still need books. But I would suggest to you that this methodology arriving at what you should pay for a car is the most rational, because the best way to know how to get in a car is to first know how to get out of a car. And we've never been able to know, like we can know today, to the penny, what it's likely to take to get out of the car. That's the second execution that provision provides. The third step of execution is one that our industry struggles with mightily, and that is, where do I find the car? Well, I want to tell you, in today's environment, showing up at your local auction or waiting on your own lot for trade-ins is likely not going to suffice, particularly if you're a velocity dealer. Today, what you have to do is you have to go farther. And going farther, practically speaking, means that you have to use electronic tools. Electronic tools have proven to be vexing for dealers. You know, a little bit of a short digression. When dealers lament to me about their inability to buy cars, I have a couple of questions. First question is, how many systems does your used car manager or buyer have login and passwords for? And surprisingly, the answer is few, maybe one. My second question is, how many cars did they bid? Forget about buy. How many cars did they bid online last month? The answer there is often pretty surprisingly low. So the reality is that doing it the old-fashioned way, just waiting for them to show up, isn't going to get the job done. You have to do something that's probably very uncomfortable for many buyers to do, and that's to use electronic tools to buy vehicles that they can't touch. But listen, it's tough business. It's the reality. You got to do some things sometimes that you prefer not to do to make the grade, and this is one of them. But what provision does is it looks at all of the vehicles at all the auctions in the country with a single click, and it shows you every single one of them, where they are. So you don't have to have passwords to multiple systems. In this case, for this dealer, where this '07 Volkswagen Touareg presently exists, closest to the dealership is at Anaheim, Chicago. And look at what we know. We know that the vehicle is going to run on May 6th. We know it's going to run in lane 9. We know it's going to run at 11:30 a.m. We know that it's running over Sport 31. It's got an electronic condition report at 4.5. And there's a line right here that we can just simply submit our bid and hit click and be done. Now think about that. Think about where we came and where we are. We actually started out behaving at a minimal level like a rational investor by saying that we're not going to put our money into this operation without certain strategic commitments, at least in terms of what types of vehicles represent the best opportunity with the least risk, and how many dollars we're willing to put at it. And then the system took over. The system took those simple inputs and laid out for us with 3 simple clicks answers to those critical questions of execution. What cars, what money, and where. And it did it simply with 3 clicks. And it did it, more importantly, more rationally, more intelligently than we've ever been able to do it before. So when I make the claim that this is likely to change the nature of used car operations, you can begin to see why. It really challenges all of the assumptions that we've had about who makes these decisions, how they're made, how difficult it is to make them. Will it happen overnight? No. Will it take time for dealers to understand, learn, develop, trust, experience, to test? Yes, it will. But I think that this represents the horizon. It represents the possible. And fortunately, it represents the present of what we can do today. Now, with some risk, because generally speaking, you shouldn't do tricks in front of live audiences with children, dogs, or technology. I'm willing to take a risk and go live. Take a volunteer. Take a volunteer. I could show you, I believe. And by the way, Josh is running my projector, is relatively new with me. This is his big moment. We're going to put Josh together. So, who would like to be a volunteer? I need the name of your dealership.
5-star Ford.
5-Star Ford. Now, this happens to be a vAuto client, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't need to be a vAuto client, but let's do it through the vAuto system. 5-Star Ford, one of the largest Ford dealers in the state of Texas, right?
Correct.
Tell me your name, please.
Kelly.
I'm sorry?
Kelly Black.
Kelly. Oh, hey, Kelly. How are you?
How are you?
Sorry.
First contact.
Kelly, have you spent much time with this provision system?
Not at all.
Okay, so I got to tell you guys something, okay? I got to tell you something really disturbing. When I created this system, well, back up a minute. This system was the vision that I held in my mind in terms of when I decided to sell my company, selling it to Auto Trader. And I felt that when I sold my company, it was only a win for me. It wouldn't be a win at all. I committed to myself and to my team and to you guys that it would be a win for my employees and it would be a win for my customers. So with that in mind, we did the acquisition. I went to work on this product, and I was pretty close to completion, really excited about it. And Auto Trader asked me to present it at their board meeting, to their board of directors, which I was eager and proud to do. So I went to Atlanta, stood before the board, demonstrated the system. You know, these executives, some of which I knew, many of which I didn't know, had some of the Cox family members in there. It was a pretty interesting group. And I concluded by saying, so you see, this is going to change the retail used car business. And somebody spoke up and they said, well, yeah, how much are you going to charge for it? And I took a really deep breath. It's not that I didn't anticipate the question. And I said to them, and there are some people in this room who are in that meeting, and they can attest to this, I said, you're not going to like the answer. And I said, I'm not going to charge anything to our existing clients. Well, why would you, if it's going to change the retail business? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you why. Because this, in my opinion, was the promise of the acquisition. Delivering this to our existing clients without any additional charge was the benefit, just the beginning, but the initial benefit of this combination. That was one of the goals upon which we agreed when we did the deal. And I said the second thing is that vAuto is a premium product, Dealers typically pay more for B Auto than they pay for competitive products, and I think that's the promise of a premium product, is that you keep your dealers ahead of the curve. And this was at a period of time when many dealers were struggling for profitability. So I felt really good about the answer, and I got permission to go forward on that basis. Not that I was asking for permission, but they agreed to it. So you want to hear something interesting today? You want to hear something? I regret it. And it's not because I want anyone's money. The reason I regret it, and I should have seen this coming, and I really fault myself, is that it's like anything else that you give for free. Yeah, free is no value. So Kelly, it kills me. And Todd, it kills me. And the rest of you, expletives, it kills me that I did this for you, and because I didn't ask you for any money, you sit on it. So knock it off, would you please? Okay. All right, I'll get going here. So let's go to Kelly's strategy page. Let's go to another deal. Expletive. It's a turned out for you.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to.
Can you spell that, please?
I only know as the Car King. Todd Caputo is the Car King, Syracuse, New York.
This is going to be fun now.
I'm not taking you on too hard. Find it?
Yes.
Okay, strategy. Now, I'm going to assume, based on my conversation with Todd before we got started today, that he too is not using the system. So when we look at a strategy page, I'm going to assume that we see no cars or no cells shut down, meaning that nobody made any choice. Because Todd's got unlimited resources. Todd has unlimited money. He's got unlimited space, so he can afford to dabble anywhere and everywhere. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of record.
Okay.
That's a lot of red.
So show me, Josh, this is Josh's big moment. We rehearsed for this one. Josh, show me a likely category that if you were a Chevrolet dealer in Syracuse, New York, you would say, hey, something's wrong. I'm missing some opportunity here.
He's 74 in red for intermediate and 20 to 25.
Nice one. $20,000 to $25,000 cars. It says he needs 74. Now, do you think that he might be missing some sales? Do you think he's missing some sales? Why? How many does he have in stock? How many has he sold over the last 45 days?
125 in stock, 51 sold.
Backwards. 125 sold. That's close, though, Josh. Oh, he's 74 over.
Yeah.
He's 74 over. Oh, that puts a whole different light on it. So what you can see here, assuming the default, which is a 45-day supply, is that Todd Caputo, as an investor, Todd, you're a really fine guy and friend, and I appreciate it. But as an investor, you're pretty loose. Yeah. Okay, we'll go there in a moment. But Todd is willing, he's got so much money that he's willing to just leave it laying around and not have it go to work in any efficient manner. Now, here's another thing that Josh just spotted. So here's another point for Josh. He's green where?
Intermediate 10 to 15.
Intermediate cars. You think that's a pretty likely segment that a Chevrolet dealer in Syracuse, New York ought to play in? How many is he licensed? Josh? How many? 19. He's short 19 $10,000 to $15,000 intermediate cars. Now, how rational would it be as an investor? If you were really an investor, with exercising the minimum degree of prudent behavior, Todd, how rational would it be to say, could we not take a few of those dollars that are just sitting idle in that category of 20 to 25,000 and just simply reallocate them to another segment where our shelf is pretty bare? I mean, am I ridiculously off-base? Am I asking you to at least think about this operation of yours, Todd, just a little bit as an investor? Does it not startle you that a blind guy can come up with this observation? Okay, now, let's take it to the next step. What $10,000 to $15,000 intermediate car would Todd buy if he was going to go out and fill that slot of Power Hermetic? So let's go to his recommendation page. And what I want you to do is I want you to filter it down only to the $10,000 to $15,000 intermediate cars. You know how to do that? Okay. Anytime it gives you a recommendation provision that you need one, I give you the top 10. Because that one just simply might not be available. So I give you, well, it is available. We already know it's available. But maybe you want to choose among 10. So I'm going to show you the top 10 intermediate cars a blind guy could pick out in Syracuse. Before it comes up, Todd, do you want to take a guess at what it would be? You're the expert. Huh? What kind of car would be the best $10,000 to $15,000 car in Syracuse, New York? You're cheating, aren't you? Is it up there? Okay, let's see. Let me go against the expert here. What car gets the highest grade? Oh, Todd! What grade does the 05 Super Legacy get? B. B. The highest grade is a B. Now, Todd, you told me a 2010 Chevy Impala, that would not be in a $10,000 to $15,000 range, would it? Yeah. It would? Okay. So, do you know better than I do? Is the 2010 Impala on that list? Not there. Why the Subaru? It gets a B. Let's look behind the B. What does it get for demand? Oh, why? Tell me, read it. Josh, it's your moment. It's in the 92nd percentile. All cars in your market being searched in intermediate 10 to 15,000. What does it get for interest and why? A. Why? How good is that, all the other people? What's it get for volume? A. Why? Oh, okay. What's it get for market day supply? Why? How many? Okay, what's it get for profitability? C minus. Why?
7,710 compared to 11,500.
Okay, and what's it get for availability?
B minus.
Why?
21 available.
Okay, and what's it get for recent experience?
B plus.
B plus, why?
Sold for 3.
And how long on the line?
32 days.
32 days. What are the odds of success of that car on the line? Pretty darn good. And a blind guy did that for you. Find one? Todd said to find one. Oh, okay. I'll take that. I'm going to wrap it up in a moment. First of all, tell me what I should pay for that car.
$7,260.
Okay, and show me where I can. Todd wants me to find the car. One simple, quick car.
It's a 90,000 mile car.
But your market loves it. Your market loves it. So that's the problem. You would love it.
Oh, that's funny.
Your market,
Everything on the list is 99,000 mile cars.
well, $10,000 to $15,000, but your market will buy it. You're opposed to stocking what your market is buying? I understand. Those things are crazy. I understand.
Unless I take it in my trailer.
But where could this car be purchased? Is it up?
The auctions are up.
Okay, here's where the car can be purchased. Okay, Todd, you let me have my way with you, and I appreciate that. And I do want to tell you guys something. Todd Caputo, Car King, Sun Chevrolet in Syracuse, New York, is one of those guys that pretty much ignores everything that I